My name is Natalie Harper, and I'm 31 years old. For most of my adult life, I thought silence was the price of keeping a family together. I let my father's wife criticize my parenting, rewrite my place in my own family, and act like every holiday, birthday, and backyard dinner belonged to her. Every time she crossed a line, my father would look at me with tired eyes and ask me to let it go, just this once, because she only wanted to feel included. So I swallowed my anger. I smiled through fake family pictures. I let her make little comments about my home, my job, my choices, and the way I raised my son. I told myself that adults could survive being hurt, as long as children still got to feel loved. Then one summer evening, in front of a yard full of relatives, she turned that cruelty on my little boy. She did not whisper it. She did not pull me aside. She humiliated him where everyone could hear, then made it clear she had never seen him as family at all. My son looked up at me like he had done something wrong, and that was the moment something inside me went completely cold. I did not scream. I did not argue. I took his hand, picked up his backpack, and walked out without giving anyone the satisfaction of watching me break. Hours later, after I had gotten him calm enough to sleep, someone pounded on my front door. Through the camera, my father begged me to open up, calling me his daughter and my son his grandson. And that was when I finally answered him with the words he should have been afraid to hear. Before I tell you what I said through that camera and what happened after I refused to open the door, tell me this. What time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels before the truth catches up with everyone who stood there and said nothing. I had spent years pretending that my father's marriage had not slowly pushed me out of my own family. He married Marissa Harper when I was 19, old enough to know exactly what she was doing, but still young enough to hope my father would notice it first. He never did. Or maybe he did and decided it was easier to disappoint me than to confront her. Marissa owned a small event decor boutique in Bend, Oregon, and from the moment she entered our lives, she treated every family gathering like a stage she had rented, and every relative like an extra she could rearrange. Thanksgiving became her production. Christmas Eve became her production. Birthdays, graduations, Easter brunch, even casual Sunday dinners somehow turned into events with matching napkins, assigned seating, and Marissa standing in the middle of the room waiting for compliments. If someone brought a dish she had not approved, she smiled like she had been slapped. If someone suggested meeting at a restaurant instead of my father's house, she acted like the family had betrayed her. And whenever I pushed back, my father always gave me the same tired excuse. She is just trying to feel included, sweetheart. Be patient with her. I was patient for 12 years. I was patient when she corrected my clothes in front of my cousins. I was patient when she called my apartment small and said it looked like a starter home for someone who had given up early. I was patient when she told people I was dramatic, because I did not want her posting pictures of my son online without asking me first. I was patient when she bought him outfits that said Nana's little guy, even though he had never called her Nana, because he barely knew what to do with her cold hugs and forced smiles. My husband, Ethan, saw it from the beginning. He is a paramedic, the kind of man who can walk into chaos and somehow make his voice calmer instead of louder. At first, he tried to give my father the benefit of the doubt. He said maybe my dad was lonely, maybe he was afraid of another divorce. Maybe he had convinced himself that keeping Marissa happy meant keeping the family together. But the older our son Caleb got, the harder it became to pretend this was just one difficult woman with too much ribbon and too many opinions. Caleb was 6, bright, gentle, a little shy around loud adults, and he adored my father. He called him Grandpa Rich and used to draw him pictures of fire trucks because my father had been a fire captain before he retired. That bond was the only reason I kept showing up. Caleb would ask if Grandpa Rich was going to be at Thanksgiving, and I would say yes, even though I knew Marissa would be there too, hovering with her phone, telling him to smile better, stand straighter, stop clinging to me, stop being so sensitive. My younger sister Avery understood better than anyone. She was 28, a paralegal, and she had moved out of my father's house later than I did, so she had suffered more years of Marissa going through drawers, reading planners, asking invasive questions, and calling it concern. Avery used to tell me, "Natalie, one day she is going to say the wrong thing to the wrong person, and Dad will not be able to clean it up." I did not want that day to come through my child. The week before my father's 61st birthday, Marissa sent me a private text that made my stomach tighten before I even finished reading it. "Make sure Caleb is rested before the party. I do not want one of his little emotional scenes ruining your father's day." I stared at that message in the teacher parking lot after work, my hand frozen around my phone. As a school counselor, I spent my days telling children that their feelings were not inconveniences. Then I drove home and had to decide whether to bring my own child around a woman who treated his feelings like stains on her tablecloth. Ethan told me we could skip it. Avery told me she would support whatever I chose. But my father called that night, sounding excited in a way I had not heard in months. He said Caleb could help him blow out the candles. He said he had bought a little fire truck toy for him. Then his voice softened and he said, "I know Marissa can be a lot, but please come. I want my daughter there. I want my grandson there." So I went. Not for Marissa. Not for the perfect backyard party. I went because I still believed there was a piece of my father that would choose us when it mattered. The party was exactly what I expected and somehow worse. Marissa had transformed my father's backyard into what she kept calling a rustic summer celebration, which basically meant burlap runners, white balloons, expensive barbecue trays, mason jars full of lemonade, and little chalkboard signs telling people where to stand, sit, eat, and take pictures. She had even set up a photo wall near the fence with fake greenery and a wooden sign that said, "Harper, Family Forever." I remember staring at those words while Caleb held my hand and wondering how many times a family could use the word forever while quietly pushing people out. My father came over first, smiling wide, wearing the navy polo Caleb had helped me pick for his birthday. Caleb ran into his arms, and for a few seconds, I let myself breathe. I let myself believe maybe the day could be simple. Maybe Marissa would be too busy performing for everyone else to target us. That hope lasted about 8 minutes. She walked over with her phone in her hand and that polished hostess smile on her face, the one that never reached her eyes. "Natalie, you made it," she said, as if I was a late vendor and not her husband's daughter. Then she bent toward Caleb and said, "There is my little picture boy. Come on, sweetheart, we need a 3-generation photo before you get messy." Caleb leaned against my leg. He did not throw a fit. He did not say anything rude. He simply whispered, "Can I stay with you first?" Marissa's smile tightened. "He is always so attached," she said. I looked at my father, waiting for him to say something easy, something kind. "Maybe he is 6. Marissa, give him a minute." Instead, he chuckled nervously and said, "Come on, buddy, just one photo for Grandpa." Caleb looked at me, and I nodded because I still thought one picture was cheaper than an argument. We stood in front of the sign. Marissa tried to place herself beside Caleb like she was the grandmother in a magazine ad, but he shifted closer to me. The photographer, one of Marissa's boutique friends, told everyone to smile. Caleb gave a small, uncertain smile. Marissa whispered loudly enough for me to hear, "We are going to have to work on that." The afternoon moved forward with that same quiet pressure. Caleb played cornhole with 2 older cousins. Ethan talked with my uncle by the grill. Avery helped me keep an eye on Marissa, though we both knew watching her was not the same as stopping her. About an hour in, the kids were running near the patio, and Caleb reached for a cup of lemonade on the edge of the table. Another child bumped into him from behind, and the cup tipped over. Lemonade spread across one of Marissa's precious runners and dripped onto the grass. It was nothing. A sticky accident at a backyard barbecue. I grabbed napkins immediately, and Caleb's face went pale. "I am sorry," he said, already close to tears. Before I could answer, Marissa's voice cracked through the yard. "Are you serious right now?" The conversations around us thinned. Caleb froze. Marissa marched over like he had smashed a window. I said, "It was an accident. I am cleaning it up." She ignored me and pointed at my son. "This is exactly what I was talking about. No discipline, no manners, no respect for anyone else's home." Caleb's lower lip trembled. My father stepped closer, but not in front of her. He said, "Marissa, maybe not here. Maybe not here. Not stop. Not do not talk to him that way. Just maybe not here." And because he did not stop her, she kept going. "No, Richard," she said, loud enough for the cousins by the fence to hear. "She needs to hear it. I am tired of pretending this is normal. He may be your grandson, but he is not mine, and I am done letting Natalie's little boy ruin every family event." The whole backyard went still. I looked around at the faces of people who had watched me grow up. My aunt looked down at her plate. One cousin suddenly became fascinated by his shoes. Someone cleared their throat and did nothing. Caleb looked at me with wet eyes and whispered, "Did I ruin Grandpa's birthday?" That sentence did more damage than all of Marissa's shouting. Something inside me locked into place. I stopped wiping the table. I stood up, took Caleb's hand, and said, "No, sweetheart. Adults ruined it." Marissa scoffed. "Oh, do not be dramatic." For once, I did not answer her. I did not ask my father why he was standing there like a guest at his own failure. I did not beg anyone to defend my child. I picked up Caleb's backpack from the patio chair, nodded once at Ethan, and walked toward the driveway. Behind me, my father said my name, but he said it softly, like he was hoping I would solve the problem for him by turning around. I did not. As we reached the side gate, I heard Marissa say, "Finally. Maybe now we can have one normal family picture." Caleb squeezed my hand harder. I kept walking. The drive home was only 20 minutes, but it felt like a border crossing between the life I had tolerated and the life I was about to choose. Caleb sat in the back seat with his backpack on his lap, silent except for one small sniffle every few minutes. Ethan drove because my hands were shaking too hard to hold the wheel. I kept hearing Marissa's voice. "He may be your grandson, but he is not mine." I kept seeing my father standing there, not confused, not unaware, just weak. That was the part I could not escape. He had understood every word. He had seen Caleb's face collapse. And still, the only thing he could offer was maybe not here. When we got home, Ethan carried the cooler inside while I took Caleb to the bathroom to wash his sticky hands. He looked at himself in the mirror and asked, "Am I bad at parties?" I knelt so fast my knees hit the tile. "No, baby, you are not bad at parties. You are not bad at anything because someone else was cruel." He nodded, but I could tell the words had not reached the place where the hurt had settled. Ethan made him toast, then changed him into pajamas with little planets on them. We let him watch one episode of his favorite cartoon on the couch, because I did not care about screen time that night. I cared about his breathing slowing down. I cared about him feeling safe in his own house. At 10:17, just as Caleb finally fell asleep with his cheek pressed against a throw pillow, my phone buzzed with a Ring camera alert. Motion detected at the front door. Then came the knocking. Not one polite knock. Not a hesitant tap. Loud, urgent pounding that made Caleb stir in his sleep. Ethan stood up, but I put a hand out. On the screen, my father stood under the porch light. Marissa was a few feet behind him with her arms crossed, looking less sorry than inconvenienced. My father's eyes were red. He leaned toward the camera and said, "Natalie, honey, open the door. We need to talk." I did not move. He knocked again. Ethan whispered, "We do not have to answer." But I knew if I stayed silent, he would rewrite that too. He would say I refused to communicate. He would say he tried. So I opened the app and turned on the microphone. "Do not knock again," I said. "Caleb is asleep." My father flinched at my voice. "Honey, please, just let me in for 5 minutes." Marissa said, "This is ridiculous." I ignored her. My father looked directly into the camera and his voice broke in a way that would have destroyed me a year earlier. "My daughter," he said, "my grandson. Please, open up." I looked through the living room doorway at Caleb sleeping under a blanket, still holding the little fire truck my father had given him before everything fell apart. Then I looked back at the screen. "Which daughter?" I asked. "Which grandson?" "According to your wife, we do not have a family." My father went completely still. Marissa stepped forward. "That is not what I meant, and you know it," I said. "You humiliated a 6-year-old over spilled lemonade. Do not stand on my porch and pretend this is a misunderstanding." She rolled her eyes. "He needed discipline." I said, "No, Marissa. He needed one adult in that yard to protect him." My father said, "Natalie, I should have handled it better." That almost made me laugh because it was such a small sentence for such a large betrayal. I said, "You had a backyard full of chances to be my father. You chose to be her husband." He swallowed hard. "I love Caleb." "Then you should have acted like it when he was looking at you," I said. Marissa muttered something about me weaponizing my child, and Ethan reached for his phone, ready to call the police non-emergency line if they refused to leave. I gave them one final sentence. "Do not come to my house again unless you are ready to apologize to my son first." Then I turned off the microphone. They stayed on the porch for another half-hour. My father knocked once more, softer this time, but I did not answer. Marissa paced in the driveway, furious that the door had not opened for her performance. When they finally left, I saved the entire Ring video into a folder on my laptop. I named it Caleb. Then I blocked my father's number, blocked Marissa's number, and sat on the floor beside my sleeping son until morning. By sunrise, Marissa had already started building the version of the story where she was the victim. I woke up to 47 messages, 6 missed calls from numbers I did not recognize, and one family group chat that looked like it had caught fire overnight. According to Marissa, Caleb had thrown a tantrum. I had stormed out to punish my father on his birthday, and she had simply asked for basic respect in her own home. It was not her home. It was my father's house. The house where I had learned to ride a bike in the driveway. The house where my mother's rose bushes still grew by the side fence. The house Marissa had spent 12 years decorating over until it looked like none of us had existed before her. But now she was telling everyone I had attacked her role in the family. Some relatives believed her immediately because believing her required less courage than confronting what they had witnessed. My Aunt Denise wrote, "Family fights happen. Do not punish your father." A cousin I barely spoke to wrote, "Caleb is sweet, but kids do need boundaries." Someone else sent me a paragraph about forgiveness that made my hands go cold. Not one of them asked how my son was. Avery called me before I could reply to anyone. "Tell me you saved the Ring footage," she said. I saved it. And the voicemails. "Good," she said, "because she is telling people you screamed at Dad and threatened her." I closed my eyes. I did not scream at anyone. I know that. "But you know how she works. She counts on you being too decent to prove her wrong." That sentence stayed with me. Too decent to prove her wrong. I looked at Caleb sitting at the kitchen table, pushing cereal around his bowl while Ethan spoke softly to him about school. I did not want to upload his pain. I did not want relatives passing around a video of the worst moment of his summer, like it was evidence in a family trial. At my job, I taught parents that children deserve privacy even when adults are angry. So I made a choice. I would not share his face. I would not share his tears. I would not turn my child into a weapon just because Marissa had turned him into a target. But I also would not let her lie. I clipped only the audio from the Ring video and the moment from the backyard that Avery had accidentally captured while filming the kids playing cornhole. In the background, clear as a bell, Marissa's voice said, "He may be your grandson, but he is not mine, and I am done letting Natalie's little boy ruin every family event." I sent that audio to the family group chat with one message. I am not asking anyone to pick sides. I am telling you why my son and I left. I will not share his face, and I will not expose his pain for gossip. But every adult who stood there and stayed silent should know exactly what they protected. Anyone who thinks humiliating a 6-year-old is acceptable can stay away from my family. For 3 minutes, no one replied. Those 3 minutes were louder than the party. Then Aunt Linda wrote, "Natalie, I am ashamed I did not speak up. I am sorry." Another cousin wrote, "I heard her say it and I froze. That was wrong." Then another message came in privately from my cousin Mark. He told me Marissa had called him at midnight crying about how I had always hated her, but when he asked whether she had actually said Caleb was not family, she hung up. Avery sent me screenshots too. Marissa had texted several relatives that I weaponized Caleb whenever I did not get my way. She wrote that I had never accepted her as a mother figure. That part was true, but not the way she meant it. I had a mother. I had never needed Marissa to become one. What I had needed was for her to stop trying to erase mine. Ethan created a folder with every screenshot, voicemail, and call log. He did not make a big speech about revenge. He simply said, "We are going to be calm, and we are going to be ready." That afternoon, my father called from a blocked number. I answered because a small, foolish part of me still hoped he had found the courage to apologize. Instead, he said, "Natalie, this has gotten out of hand." I said, "Yes. Your wife made sure of that." He sighed. She was wrong, but sending that audio embarrassed her. I looked at Caleb's untouched lunch on the counter. "She embarrassed herself," I said. "She hurt my son." There was a pause. Then he said the sentence that closed something in me. "You know how she gets." I answered, "Yes, Dad. I do. And I am done letting you use that as a warning instead of a reason to stop her." He had no answer. Marissa did, though. By evening, the voicemail started. She called me ungrateful. She said I had poisoned the family. She said I owed my father an apology for ruining his birthday. But not once, not one single time, did she say Caleb's name with remorse. That was when I understood the truth. She was not sorry she had made a child cry. She was furious that people had heard her do it. Marissa had spent 12 years making herself the queen of family events, and she lost her crown faster than I ever expected. It started with Thanksgiving. Every year she hosted it at my father's house, though hosting mostly meant ordering people around while everyone else cooked, cleaned, and praised her centerpieces. 2 days after the audio went into the family chat, Aunt Linda created a new group message without Marissa. She wrote that Thanksgiving would be a potluck at the community clubhouse this year, and that anyone uncomfortable with basic kindness toward children did not need to attend. It was the first open challenge to Marissa's control I had ever seen. Then my cousin Mark canceled the photographer Marissa had booked for fall family portraits. Avery told me Marissa had called 3 relatives crying, then screaming, then crying again, when they would not agree that I had destroyed the family. Her Facebook post came next. Some daughters forget who welcomed them when they had nowhere else to go. Some people use children to punish grandparents. It stayed up for 20 minutes. In those 20 minutes, 3 relatives commented. One wrote, "Children are not props." Another wrote, "A 6-year-old should never be humiliated at a family barbecue." Aunt Linda wrote, "Delete this and reflect." Marissa deleted the post, but Avery had already saved it. Ethan kept adding everything to the folder. I hated that we needed a folder. I hated that protecting my peace required documentation. But Marissa escalated because losing attention felt like losing oxygen to her. She called from new numbers. She sent flowers to our house with a card that said, "From Nana Risa," even though Caleb had never called her that. She dropped off a gift bag at our front door while we were at work, and the Ring camera caught her standing there for almost 3 minutes, staring into the lens like she wanted me to know she could still reach us. That night, Caleb found the bag before I did. He read the card slowly and asked, "Do I have to say thank you?" I took the bag from his hands and said, "No, sweetheart. Gifts are not apologies when they make you feel scared." The next morning, I informed Caleb's school that only Ethan and I were allowed to pick him up. The office staff knew me because I worked in the same district, and I hated the look of concern on their faces when I explained why. 3 days later, Marissa appeared in the school parking lot near dismissal. She did not get near Caleb, but she stood beside her car holding another gift bag until the principal asked her to leave. That was the moment Ethan said, "We are done hoping she gets bored." Avery helped us build a timeline. As a paralegal, she knew exactly how to organize the evidence without making it emotional. Dates, times, screenshots, voicemails, ring clips, school report, blocked numbers, delivery receipts. When I saw it laid out in order, I felt sick. Not because I doubted myself, but because the pattern was so clear. Marissa did not want reconciliation. She wanted control restored. We filed for a temporary harassment protection order. My father called again after he found out. This time, I answered on speaker with Ethan sitting beside me. Dad said, "Natalie, do you really need to take it this far?" I said, "She showed up at my son's school." He went quiet. Then he said, "She just wanted to give him a present." I said, "She wanted to remind me that my boundaries mean nothing to her." He exhaled sharply, like I was being difficult. "She misses being part of the family." I said, "She told my child he was not her family. She does not get to miss a title she used as a costume." The hearing was short, but I remember every second. Marissa arrived wearing cream, with her hair curled and tissues in her hand, like she was auditioning for sympathy. My father sat behind her, smaller than I had ever seen him. He would not look at me. Marissa told the judge she was a heartbroken grandmother who had been unfairly cut off after one emotional misunderstanding. She said I was sensitive. She said Caleb was confused because I had filled his head with adult issues. I wanted to stand up and scream, but I did not. When it was my turn, I handed over the timeline and spoke the way I spoke to parents at work when the truth mattered too much for anger to lead. I said, "A grandmother does not tell a child he is not family. A grandmother does not punish a child because she cannot control his mother. And a safe adult does not show up at a child's school after being told to stay away." The judge listened to the audio. Marissa's face changed when her own voice filled the room. She looked less sad then. She looked exposed. The temporary order was granted. She could not come near me, Ethan, Caleb, our house, or Caleb's school. It was not forever, and it did not magically heal anything. But when we walked out of that courthouse, I felt like I could inhale for the first time in weeks. My father followed us to the parking lot, careful to keep distance, and said, "I did not think it would go this far." I turned around and looked at him, really looked at him. The man who had once run into burning buildings had somehow spent years afraid of one woman's anger. I said, "That is because you thought I would keep absorbing the damage." He flinched. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Thanksgiving came 6 weeks later. I did not go to the clubhouse dinner, but Avery sent me a picture. Folding tables, crock pots, paper plates, children laughing, no matching centerpieces, no Marissa directing traffic in the middle of the room. My father was not there either. Aunt Linda said he had chosen to stay home with his wife. For the first time, that did not hurt the way it used to. It only clarified things. Marissa had wanted to be the center of the family so badly that she finally got exactly what she demanded. She got a house with my father in it, quiet and perfectly decorated, while the rest of us learned we could gather without her. 4 months after the barbecue, Caleb turned 7, and we threw the least perfect party I had ever loved. It was at a park near the river, with picnic tables, grocery store cupcakes, sidewalk chalk, juice boxes, and a soccer ball that kept rolling under the wrong bench. There were no custom banners, no photo wall, no assigned colors, no adult standing in the middle of everything demanding gratitude. Just kids running until their cheeks turned red and people who understood that a child's birthday did not need to look expensive to feel safe. Caleb wore a dinosaur shirt and a paper crown one of his classmates made for him. Halfway through the party, he ran over to me with frosting on his chin and said, "This is a good party, right?" I smiled and said, "The best one." He nodded like he was confirming something important to himself, then ran back to his friends. He had stopped asking whether he ruined Grandpa's birthday. He still had hard days, and we did not pretend one good afternoon erased everything, but he laughed more easily again. He slept through the night again. He no longer watched the front door every time the Ring camera chimed. That was the real victory. Not Marissa being embarrassed, not the family group chat turning against her, not the court order. The victory was my son feeling like a child again. Near the end of the party, Avery arrived with a small envelope in her purse. She waited until Caleb was busy opening presents, then handed it to me. "It is from Dad," she said. I did not open it right away. My first instinct was anger because even his apology had arrived through someone else's hands. But after everyone left, after Ethan loaded the cooler into the car and Caleb fell asleep in the back seat surrounded by tissue paper and plastic dinosaurs, I sat at our kitchen table and read the letter. My father's handwriting was shaky. He wrote that he had told himself silence was peace because peace was easier than responsibility. He wrote that he had asked me to be the bigger person because he had been too small to protect me. He wrote that he heard Caleb's voice in his head asking whether he ruined the birthday, and he did not know how to forgive himself for being one of the reasons a child had asked that question. He did not ask to come over. He did not ask me to drop the order against Marissa. He did not say she meant well. For the first time, he wrote my son's name without making it about himself. I cried, but I did not call him. Ethan sat beside me and read the letter too. When he finished, he squeezed my hand and said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I do not know yet." And that was the truth. An apology can be real and still not be a key back into your home. A person can finally understand the damage and still not be safe enough to return. I told Avery later that if Dad wanted any chance of knowing Caleb again, he would need therapy, time, and a real apology delivered in a way that did not put pressure on a child to comfort an adult. Most importantly, he would have to come alone. Marissa would never again be part of my son's life. As for her, the last I heard, she had stopped being invited to most family gatherings. Her boutique lost a few local clients after her Facebook behavior made its way through the community, though I never posted about her publicly. I did not need to. People like Marissa usually believe they are being destroyed by rumors when really they are being recognized by the truth. She still called herself the victim. She still told anyone who would listen that I had taken her family away. But fewer and fewer people were willing to listen. That may have been the most satisfying consequence of all. She had spent years building a stage, and in the end, the audience walked out. I wish I could say I felt nothing but triumph, but real life is not that clean. I missed the father I thought I had. I grieved the family I kept trying to protect. But I also felt proud. Proud that I had finally taught my son the lesson I had spent years teaching other people's children. Love should not require you to shrink. Family should not be a place where one person is allowed to wound everyone else and call it tradition. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are education in action. They teach children that respect matters, that emotional safety matters, and that valuable knowledge is not only found in schools, but also in the way adults choose to protect the vulnerable when it would be easier to stay quiet. I used to think keeping the peace meant swallowing the hurt. Now I know better. Sometimes keeping the peace means removing your child from the room where the harm is happening. Sometimes forgiveness is not a reunion. Sometimes the healthiest family is the one you rebuild after you stop begging unsafe people to love you correctly. So if you were in my place, would you let my father back into Caleb's life after one apology? Or would you make him prove he had truly changed over time? Tell me honestly what you would do.
My team and I are always trying to create revenge stories that combat drama, emotion, and valuable lessons for our audience. This video is completely fictional and made only for entertainment and educational purposes. We hope each story can remind viewers that their kindness should not be treated like weakness.